Hi, this is Ian Smith, and this is Transition Thursdays. It's my weekly video of all things related to succession planning, transitioning businesses to new owners, whether that's to family, to management, or to third parties. And if you're new to this channel, leave a comment, but take a look at the link to the newsletter, because every 2 weeks we send out a newsletter, and I think it's got great information, whether you're a business owner or you're an advisor to business owners. I think you'll find something in each bi-weekly article that gives you something to think about. So today I want to talk about my love-hate relationship with earnouts, because I've said earlier this year that I think earnouts are going to be more prevalent this year when we have times of uncertainty. It's not that much different from COVID, when there's a concern about what future earnings are going to look like. It makes it hard to bridge that expectation gap between buyers and sellers. Buyers see a lot more risk than sellers, so they are only willing to pay a lower price than what the sellers want. And so you have to look for ways to bridge that gap. And earnouts is one way to do that. So why do I love earnouts? Well, I love earnouts when I'm on the buyer's side, because it doesn't cost me as much up front. I can, which is number one reason. Number two, if there is an earnout, it's paid with company earnings that are already at an agreed upon threshold. So I know that I'm getting a return on my investment already, and the rest, or a portion of that remainder, can be paid to the seller. So it's a way to mitigate my risk, pay less up front, and have a variable payment at the back end, only if the company does as well as the seller expects. So on the seller side, I really don't like earnouts. It's not that I hate them, but I don't like them for lots of different reasons. Number one, earnouts almost never seem to benefit the seller in the amount that they would expect. And so that makes it very difficult to convince a seller on an earnout. So in that case, what we want to make sure is we get as much value for the business up front as possible, so that the owner is still reasonably happy with how much he's getting at closing, and the rest is sort of the bonus. So if that's the case, then we can support earnouts. The other thing is, why have an earnout when I might as well just roll equity and have an equity position in the business and have dividends, or have a future value of the business if it grows, and I'm willing to take that risk. So if I'm a 45, 50-year-old, 55-year-old business owner, and I'm still going to be working in the company, maybe helping through the transition period of 1 or 2 years, maybe I roll equity instead of providing some sort of earnout. Or I provide a vendor note, which is essentially financing. That is another option. It's maybe less risky, but it also has less upside. And you may only see a very minimal amount of interest on that vendor note during the time that it's outstanding. So different things that can be done. So if you decide that an earnout is the best alternative to bridge that expectation gap, here's a couple things that I want you to really think about and hopefully do when the time comes. Number one, document it. Document it really thoroughly in the share purchase agreement. Perhaps even have a schedule to the share purchase agreement, which has the more formal calculation methodology that's linked to your P&L, maybe even as far down into your GL, because if there is a conflict, you want to be able to understand exactly what it should be, so that a third party, an arbitrator or a lawyer, can look at it and understand how this was intended to be calculated. Number two, if you're on the seller side, you want to be as high up in the P&L as possible when coming to calculate that earnout, because there's less risk that a buyer can alter the way that they account for earnings in the statements, despite what's documented in the share purchase agreement. And so you want to be high up in the P&L as possible. Conversely, if you're the buyer, you want to be at the bottom of the P&L, because you want to have control over how you manage the business. So the truth ends up being somewhere in the middle. I normally see it sort of in around the gross margin calculation, because that takes away all the general and administrative costs that may be overlaid into the business. That keeps the seller reasonably happy. But that would be a good place to end up. If you end up lower, and in fact, no matter where you end up, you should have some guardrails. And what are guardrails? Guardrails are documents that really articulate what the buyer can and cannot do with respect to the future financial statements of the business as they relate to that earnout. So it may be that they limit the amount of discounts on products sold. It may limit their ability to have related party transactions whereby they sell the products from the company that's being sold to their parent company at a lower price, thereby reducing margins and profitability in the business they've bought and increasing the profits at their head office or the parent company. So there are lots of different guardrails that you can put in. They should be in the share purchase agreement. They should be articulated in the schedules as well, so that there's no room for confusion. Most importantly, the calculation should be consistent with past practices of the business. It's one thing to run a business as an entrepreneur and have a certain way of writing off inventory and accruing for warranties and maybe vacations, for example. If the buyer comes in and says, well, that's not the way we do it and we're going to change things in this first year, they can do that, but it has to be taken out of the calculation of the earnout. So very important to think about, so that there's very little room for confusion or dispute when the time comes. So that's kind of my message today about earnouts, my love-hate relationship with them. I hope you will sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll find it very worthwhile. And I will see you next week. In the meantime, for the Canadian viewers, I hope you have a great long weekend. It's Canada Day weekend, or not Canada Day, it's BC Day weekend in BC, but it's the August long weekend is what we used to call it when I was a kid, on Monday. So have a great long weekend. Hopefully the weather holds wherever you are in Canada, and I will talk to you next Thursday. Bye.